All right. Welcome everybody to Celtics Postgame Live, the final Celtics postgame of the season. And another tough one as the Celtics fall to the Nets in Game 5. And something we all kind of saw coming. Final score, Nets 123, Celtics 109, a 14-point loss. And the writing was kind of on the wall. I know in the pregame show we were talking pretty much like it was over. We were saying our goodbyes. And I think I mentioned at the end of the show just, well, this is going to be really awkward if they end up winning, and we have to come on here again in Game 6. But, it wasn't the case, and I think it was pretty obvious what was going to happen tonight. As, unfortunate as that sounds to say, it was pretty obvious what was going to happen in this series. It was pretty obvious once Jaylen Brown went down what was going to happen this season, and this was kind of what was expected from that point forward. Definitely what I expected. I talked about it as soon as Jaylen Brown went down. It was just all hope for the season was kind of lost. I don't know about you guys out there. I know many people were frustrated with the season, how it went, everything like that. But, I still held out a little bit of hope that, with everybody healthy, they could do something. And that just never happened throughout the entire season. Everybody was never healthy at the same time. I think they only had 7 games where Robert Williams, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and Kemba Walker all started and I know it took Robert Williams a while to break into the starting lineup, but only 7 games with those guys together, and they were 6-1 in those games. So when they had all of those guys, they were a good team. It just never it never broke the right way. COVID happened, injuries happened, and some things you can get on the team for, some things you can get on the players for. If you want to get on Kemba Walker for not being healthy enough, not being reliable enough, you can do that. If you want to get on Robert Williams for the same issues, you can do that. I don't know if I'd extend that to Jaylen Brown. I probably wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't extend it to Jason Tatum for the COVID issues, or Evan Fournier if you want to throw him in the loop. But Marcus Smart dealt with his injury issues. It was just a really unfortunate season. And I don't think it says a lot about the Celtics long term. I think it's just this season can be viewed, honestly, in a vacuum. But it's just tough how it all broke out. And I'll get into you guys' comments. I know I see the comments flooding in already. So I want to talk about how the season went, how the game went, everything like that. And we'll get into plenty of that. I don't know how much we'll talk about the game itself. I think it's a lot of bigger picture. We want to wrap up the season as a whole. This is the last post-game show we're going to do. Ev couldn't make it tonight. So I'm filling in. Ev did, I know he would want to thank you guys. He's just running into some trouble, but I know he would want to thank you guys for tuning in. And I gave a big thank you at the end of the last stream. So, I don't want to repeat myself. I don't know if I was going to be doing this tonight or not, but certainly, yeah, thank you guys for tuning in every night. But I don't know how much of the game we'll talk about, but we'll definitely touch on it a little bit and then get into some end of season stuff and notes about that. I assume you guys are going to want to talk about trades. You're going to want to talk about free agency. You're going to want to talk about maybe the statuses of some of the jobs in place, whether, who you want to see out of town, everything like that. What do you think the problems with the team are? What do you think needs to be addressed in the offseason? I actually have an article. Maybe we'll talk about it within the show today. I have an article up right now. I have a bunch of articles I'm working on, but I have one up right now for season's end, technically, about free agent targets they can look to bring in. So that's definitely something that we can talk about a little bit, and we'll get into all that stuff as the show goes on. So keep putting fun in the comments in. I'll get to them in just a bit here, and we'll talk more about all that stuff. But yeah, if you want to touch on the game at all, we can talk about what happened. Tatum ended with 32 and 9, which is actually really good, all things considered. But, he started out slow, didn't shoot great. I ended up shooting 44%, which is okay. But that first half was just brutal. And really the majority of that game, and then kind of in garbage time, he started playing well, but it just wasn't enough. And it's kind of, it's just one superstar versus 3. And that's what it was the whole series. And that's why it's so disappointing. That's pretty much the story of the game. Fournier, another guy we can talk about if you want to talk about whether he should be re-signed or not by the team. I'm sure we'll get into that. And you can just see, right here, Harden, Irving, and Durant. That's what you're going up against. 34, 10, and 10 for Harden. It was his night tonight to go off. Irving with 25 and Durant with 24. It's hard to stop all 3 of those guys. Never mind just one of them. It's hard to stop just one of them. Never mind all 3 is what I should say. But let's get into the chat a little bit. Michael starting things out. Thank God the season is over. Time to clean house from top to bottom. Now, Michael, and maybe you guys can address this too. What do you mean by that? Because, I mean, it's not time to trade Tatum and JB, which I'm going to jump into the next comment with. Not time to trade Tatum and JB. Robin Smart should be moved in return for a superstar. And we'll see if that can happen. I don't know if that can happen, Enmal. I'm not saying it can't happen because I think, like, if you throw everything at the Wizards, just hypothetically speaking, if Bradley Beal goes to the Wizards and says, I want out, I want to trade, and I only want to go to Boston, and everything comes together where Bradley Beal says, I'm only going to Boston. I'm only resigning in Boston to play with Jason Tatum. If that happens, which is in the realm of possibility, and he forces his way to Boston, can you make the deal worthwhile enough for the Wizards that they say, fine, we'll do it? Can you throw, I know, you're going to have to put Kemba in the deal, whether it's a 3-team deal where he reroutes to somewhere else because the Wizards don't want him, or he goes to the Wizards. Unlikely. I would assume he reroutes somewhere else, maybe to Oklahoma City or something. Regardless of that, the deal has to include Kemba in some capacity so the salaries match. So you trade Kemba, then you trade Rob, you trade, Smart if he needs to be included, whatever. You trade Neesmith, Pritchard, everything, and all your draft picks for the next 5 years. You throw everything, and you get Beal, you get Tatum and Brown together. And then you say, well, what else do they have if you do all of that? Well, they could technically keep Smart. I would try to keep Smart in that scenario. And I would also say that you probably keep Thompson. And then if you're trading Kemba for Beal, I guess it depends how the salary is all going to work. But you still could re-sign Evan Fournier theoretically. So you could still have a starting lineup of Smart, Beal, Brown, Tatum, Tristan Thompson, and Evan Fournier off the bench. And then Jabari Parker off the bench as well because he would still be here. So that's a pretty good team. So, and I know people are going to say they don't want to give up Neesmith, they don't want to give up Pritchard, and stuff. And some other people are going to say that's crazy, the Wizards would never do that, blah, blah. There's going to be, it's just, we're in fantasy land right now talking about this kind of stuff. But that's something I'm also going to touch on in a future article is, do they have enough for Bradley Beal? Can they throw everything except Brown and Tatum at the Wizards and actually get Bradley Beal? I don't know the answer to that. I think it's again, I think probably not. If I had gun to my head, I would say no. But it's fun to play around with imaginations of that and imagine. And I think that Neesmith, he didn't play super well today, but he played decent down the stretch of the last game. Neesmith didn't do much today at all, but he showed an ability to shoot that as a rookie that should be somewhat enticing to teams. We know Pritchard played really well as a rookie, should be somewhat of an enticing trade piece. Rob has his injury issues, but should be kind of enticing. So you have pieces that are interesting enough that it's like, can that get a team to bite? Romeo Langford, throw him in there too if you have to. Good defender. Obviously, he's proven that throughout this season. If in his limited action, if he's proven anything, it's just that he can defend a little bit. So I wonder if you can actually throw everything but the kitchen sink but that is interesting. Everything but the kitchen sink with you keep Tatum and Brown there, the kitchen sink, and you can't Bradley Beal. I don't know if it's possible, but I would certainly love to see it. Let's see. Lan saying these shows were so good. Thank you, appreciate it. Next year will be ours, and Danny will do his job. So I mean, we'll see because they don't really have a lot of flexibility. Outside of a few areas, like, they don't have a lot of money to spend in free agency, so they don't have a huge avenue to go anywhere there. They don't, it's not like they have, they don't have a perfect avenue for a trade. Like, they have some options, like I'm saying. They can do some things with Smart and Robert Williams and Neesmith and Pritchard if they want to. But if you're making a trade like that, some might view it as depending on who you're trading for. If it's Beal, that's one thing, but it's hard to know exactly what Ainge has on the table available to him this offseason. So he's really going to need to work some magic, but we'll see what he can do. Ian saying, thanks for a good year. These were awesome. Hopefully there's some good news over the offseason because God knows we need it. And guys, we'll be covering that too as well. So we're not going away because the Celtics season's going away. So stick with us through that. It finally happened, all the speculation from months ago, and we go in the first round. I thought we would get to at least round 2, but we effed up by sucking and getting 7th place. Should be a top 3 team in the East. Top 3, Top three, maybe. That's tough. I think the Bucks are definitely better than the Celtics. I think they're definitely more talented than the Celtics right now. At least for this season, they were. Unquestionably, the Nets are, yes. The Sixers had a really, really good year. I know, some people still don't believe in the Sixers. They had a really, really good year. They played way above their heads. The Celtics and Sixers have had some battles in the past, so I'm hesitant to give the Sixers a complete pass and say absolutely they're better than the Celtics. I think that's more closer than the other ones, despite the fact that the Sixers were the best team in the regular season. But top three is still a little tough. Should they have been top four? Yes, they have the talent to do that. They should have been better than the Knicks and the Hawks. But, this year the East was better than it was for a long time. Like, the East had a lot of good top talent, very competitive. I think the series between the Bucks and the Nets is going to be great. It's going to be a fantastic second-round series. I think the conference final should be fantastic whenever we get there with Sixers, Bucks, or Sixers, Nets, whoever that is. I think that should be great. So I think that, all that stuff makes me think that it's a little too hard to just say that the Celtics definitely should have been a top three team in the East. I think that you could have made an argument for it before the season, maybe, but with considering where Kemba's been at, and Kemba, again, I've been a Kemba defender. He's played well. When he's been out there, not in the playoff, of course, but his regular season numbers are very comparable to his career numbers. If you actually look at his statistics this season, they're pretty much the exact same as his career averages. So when he's been out there, he's been fine, but he's not been out there enough. You need him to be better if you're limiting his action like that. So even still, they didn't have enough this year with health, factored in there to be considered that. And I don't know. I don't know if they can get there next year, because the Bucks are going to be back. The Nets are probably going to be back, we can assume. The Sixers are going to have, another year with Doc, and they played great this season. So it's going to be another tall task. And who knows, maybe the Heat make some magic happen. They bring in a big name this offseason. Who knows? There's still a lot of moving pieces in the East that you have to watch out for. MT saying Jabari deserves a lot more credit than he will get. 13 points, 3 rebounds, 1 block. Only player in the plus tonight for plus minus. He can be great in the post, maybe draw 2 and kick, but doesn't get any calls. And, I think or doesn't get play called, doesn't get, and I think Jabari's shown a lot this season that I've really liked, and I hope that he can be a part of this team moving forward and a key piece. I just know that the way Brad Stevens values defense, I know that it's going to be hard for Parker to find minutes no matter what. So I'm interested to see if Stevens is going to trust him. They signed him to that 2-year contract, so I think that they have to have some plans for him for the future. But it's just, I don't know if he's going to be able to find consistent, reliable playing time, which is unfortunate, because I agree with you. I really like him too. I think that he could be a great bench scoring piece, like at least a very solid one. You talked about 13 points there. Like, he's great. He's really, really good offensively still, despite his injury history and, everything that he's dealt with over the course of his career after being the number 2 overall pick and everything like that. He still can score at a decent level. I don't know if they're really going to trust him enough to be that player that he could be or that we want him to be, but I'd like to see it happen. Ian saying, I'd rip the core down to JT and JB and go from there, while being open to bring back Rob and Smart and the younger guys like Romeo and Pritchard. Kemba and guys like Grant Williams have to go. Again, it depends on what you're getting for them. So I want you guys to even throw some out there. So throw some trade packages out there. What am I getting for Kemba Walker? Because if I'm trading Kemba Walker for, for example, I saw someone, Corey B on Twitter. I want to give a shout out to Corey. I saw him tweet out a trade idea where you trade Kemba to the Pelicans for Lonzo and Steven Adams. And it's like a sign and trade kind of thing with Lonzo. I actually don't mind that. I kind of like that. That's actually interesting. And you have to throw in some other pieces. I'm fine with that. I do that. I think that Lonzo has enough upside to do that. But I'm not doing it for nobodies. I'm not just dumping Kemba's salary for nothing. I want something tangible in return, even if I have to throw other assets on the deal. I'm not just shipping Kemba out for nothing, because he's not nothing. As much as people want to treat him like nothing, when he plays, he still can contribute. He can still drop 30 points, every third or fourth game. So I'm not trading a player that can drop 30 points every third or fourth game for pennies, for scratch tickets or whatever. I don't care what his salary is, because the fact that his salaries where it is makes him harder to trade, and I understand that. So but I'd rather just let it run out than get a second-round pick for him, because it's not like if you trade Kemba, you don't then have that money to spend. That's it. You're over the cap. When you trade Kemba, you're still going to be over the cap. You're not going to get his money back to spend. So, I see no value in trading him for nothing. You need to get something back. But if you do a sign and trade with the Pelicans where you get Lonzo, you get Steven Adams, who you can maybe hope to revitalize his career a little bit because he's been struggling here, then maybe I'd consider it. Let's see. Next comment. Langford also had a good night as well. Love that he at least ended the season on a positive note, even if it's his last time in green, and this ups his trade value. Langford's an interesting case because obviously he didn't play a lot this season. He showed, that he can be a really good defender. Didn't show as much as you'd hope for offensively. Didn't show much of anything offensively. Hit some shots tonight, but Langford, I think you had to be hoping for something more because he was such a highly touted prospect coming out of high school, and that was part of the the value of him falling to 14. You thought, well, maybe, he had a bad college career, he got injured, but maybe he can replenish some of that value in the NBA and become the player he was supposed to be coming out of high school. And it hasn't happened offensively. He hasn't shown that ability. So kind of unfortunate that Romeo has not been good enough offensively to kind of give you hope that he can be a starting caliber player in the future. At least that's what I've seen. But he has been a really good defender. So, I think that's something that can give you a little bit of hope as far as, maybe just that he can be a key rotation piece for some team. And maybe some team looks at him and says he can be more than that. I don't know. But as far as upping his trade value, he might have done that a little bit, but I don't know that he did it enough to really get anything spectacular back in return. So I don't know. Romeo is again an interesting case. I just wish he wasn't injured all season, so maybe we could have seen more development. But it was just okay. Ian saying why no Ev? Ev was out. I think Ev was at an event, a family event, so he couldn't make it. But I know that he's been killing him that he couldn't make these last couple events. So our last couple post-game shows. So I'm sure he'll have something for you guys, a season wrap-up on YouTube, something along the likes where he'll basically say farewell for the season, and he'll be around in the offseason too. We're not going away because of that. Langford added trade value. I don't see how he can help the team if PP and Nesmith are back. Championship teams don't have that many young players. So I think that is true. I think that's a fair point. And, I think that overall, I think they do need to cut down on some of the youth on the team this year and figure out a way to kind of manage that a little bit and trade some of those players away for good players. I'd like to see them consolidate a number of them for a star or at least a starter, a minimum an Evan Fournier type. I don't know, what are the names I could throw out there off the top of my head that could be available. But I think that if they can get something along those lines for a number of those young guys, that would be interesting to me. I just don't know if that's possible. And, I don't know if I want to trade Langford for, just a 1-year rental kind of guy. I don't know if that's the way, I don't know if that's the way you want to build the team. Because theoretically, Tatum's still young, Brown's still young. If you let all these guys grow together, then you're right. Young teams don't have that many, or championship teams don't have that many young players. But if they all age and grow together, then maybe you have something in 3 to 4 years. Now, I know people don't want to wait 3 to 4 years, but Tatum and Brown are still young enough that maybe they're not going to be ready to lead a team to a championship until 3 to 4 years from now. So that's kind of what Danny Ainge has to decide while he's making his moves this offseason is, do I want the instant gratification of getting a guy on a 1-year rental? Maybe I get, whatever. I don't know, Eric, I'm just going to throw this name out there, but Eric Bledsoe, if you want to get him as a backup guard or something, or whoever you can trade for at a backup wing. I know Trevor Reeves is a free agent, but something, I don't know, if you want to trade for Jay Crowder, or I'm just pulling these names out of nowhere. I'm not really thinking too much about it, but, just your typical average player that, is a slightly below average starter, above average bench player, is that worth, what you're going to give up in a young player who could potentially be something more, or at least could be an equal player in due time for, more years than you're getting out of either of those guys. So I don't know. That's what Danny Ainge is going to kind of have to decide here. And we'll see what packages are available to them. I'm sure the rumors will start flooding in now that the season is over. Give the ball to Romeo and so confident. I know, Birkin, you love Romeo, but you just and I said the thing about his offense not coming along. You can't just, when you have Brown and Tatum and you're trying to win games, you can't allow Romeo to, it's not a young team. You're not the Cavaliers. You're not the Bulls or whatever other team you want to throw out there. You're not the Timberwolves or whatever, where you can just say, all right, we suck, so just give the young guys all the run and let them develop. No, you're trying to win games. So you cannot just give shots to Romeo at the expense of the team and say, oh yeah, let's just let him figure it out. It's that's part of the unfortunate thing, and it might affect player development, but that's the way it goes when you're in Boston. You're trying to win games. Steven's saying he doesn't have an offensive game. About Romeo, he can spot up, shoot, and drive sometimes. And I don't even know that he could spot up, shoot that well. Like, Romeo really struggled at points this series and this season, spotting up and shooting threes. I think, he was, what was the 3-point percentage this season? I think it was somewhere hovering around 30-something%. And he had a great game tonight. He had a decent enough game tonight in his action, 17 points. But overall this season, he shot 28% on 3-pointers, which is just not good enough. Not good enough when you're playing with Tatum and Brown, and they need to kick it out to you to be the guy that. And he shot coming into tonight, he was shooting 30% from 3 in the series. Tonight he shot 3 of 7, so that upped it a little bit. But when you're playing with Tatum and Brown, you just can't be shooting 28% from 3, because those guys are going to drive and kick it to you. Like, they're going to draw defenders. You need to be a good spot up shooter. And Romeo was not at all. So that's the part of his game that really needs to develop if he's going to stay on this team. Because for as good as he is on defense, I don't think they can use him as even a role player if he's going to be that poor defensively. Birkin saying Danny is building a dynasty. It's a vision, a whole decade of dominance. We'll see, Birkin. A decade's a long time, first of all. And second of all, you're banking on a lot of development if you think that the dynasty thing. I know you're half of that's in jest and you're just, doing the fan thing. But, I don't know about Danny Ainge building a dynasty. Fournier and Smart 2-15 from 3. Again, that's just tonight. They each had good games in the season. Smart, or in the series, I should say. Smart was good in game 3, obviously, and helped them. Again, I'm not gonna focus too much on tonight's game for too many things, just because I was pretty much ready to call it quits from the start of the game. The writing was on the wall. Henry saying spotlight is on Danny Ainge this offseason. It really is, and this is going to be as much pressure as the Celtics have faced, at least going into an offseason in some time. I feel like even when Kyrie left that offseason, there wasn't a lot of pressure on them. It felt like the decision was being made for them. And now Danny Ainge is going to actually have to make some decisions himself. This isn't a situation where a player might be leaving and it's out of his control, whether that's Gordon Hayward, whether that's Kyrie Irving. This is a situation where he has his team. Most of the guys are still under contract besides Evan Fournier. And you need to get better. So you need to decide what you're going to do. You need to decide what moves you're going to make, what trades you're going to make. And that is all on you to figure out. And I'm interested to see what Ainge is going to do. So I think this is really as much pressure as he's faced going into an offseason. And it's going to be as much pressure as Brad Stevens has faced going into next season, because a lot of people have wanted him fired, are going to still want him fired. And from what Adrian Wojnarowski is saying, he will not be fired. He will still be the head coach going into next season. And this is probably the lowest his approval rating has been as the Celtics head coach. So you have to imagine that he's going to be he might not be on the hot seat for Danny Ainge. I don't know what Danny Ainge's plans are with Brad Stevens. He might think Brad Stevens should have a job for life. I don't know. But as far as the city of Boston is concerned, there's going to be a lot of heat on Brad Stevens to do his job well next year. And as much pressure as you will have seen on these two positioned on the team, these two guys in quite some time, perhaps in their entire tenures with the Celtics. Danny Ainge is questionable. He's been here a long time. He had a lot of pressure to get them good when he initially came in, and then he eventually brought in Garnett and Allen and those guys, and there were different pressures during the Big Three era. Obviously, the pressure to move on from them, that was obviously a very difficult decision, but he's going to have to make some difficult decisions this offseason too, so we'll see what happens. Fab White saying it will take another year or two for Tatum to get the touch fouls called that the Net Stars get all the time. And that was something that definitely stood out in this game. I mean, you saw a couple times. Hey, I saw one of the times he got hit in the head, and he looks at the ref like, what is going on? You just called this foul. You overturned this ticky-tack foul for Harden where he pushed Fournier to the ground. He elbowed him into the ground. Fournier was moving, so I guess, Harden can just elbow him, and it's a foul on Fournier. And then Tatum comes down, gets whacked in the head, and he's like, I'm not getting the call for that. Like, it's ridiculous. So it's funny to see that he's still not getting those calls even now, even after he's called it out. Post-game show and some Suns basketball. Beat LA. Absolutely, guys. I assume many of you are Suns fans out there now. I can't blame you. And I will encourage you, I'll just say, have some fun with it. I know bandwagoners get a bad rap, and I'm not advocating for anybody to bandwagon necessarily. But just sit back, enjoy the NBA playoffs, root for the teams and players you like. You don't have to go crazy with it. You don't have to be considered. You don't have to call yourself a fan of those teams. But just have fun. Enjoy the playoffs. The Celtics are out. It's unfortunate. It's the earliest exit in quite some time. So really, I mean, it stinks from that standpoint. But look at the positives in it and just try to enjoy the rest of the league because there's a lot of great basketball being played out there. And just let yourself enjoy it. Don't let anyone ruin your good time. And have fun watching NBA basketball because there's a lot of good series still left to be played, and it should be a lot of fun. Nets Bucks should be a lot of fun. Knicks Hawks, I know that one's kind of lopsided right now, but that one should be a lot of fun too. Suns Lakers obviously, and whatever else we end up getting. So just enjoy it. Just enjoy whatever series come your way. Tatum still played well. All of the clowns trying to chase him out of town need to end just like this season. I will say the good thing is we haven't seen much of that on this stream. So I'll give everybody that kind of benefit and say, well, no one's really come out and said anything too bad about Tatum, trade Brown. So no one's come out and said that stuff yet. To me, at least, I assume some people are saying it on Twitter and blow it all up and whatnot. I think that as far as Tatum and Brown are concerned, obviously you keep those guys. And we'll see about everything else. I think there's still an argument to just kind of run it back if the Celtics want to do that and bring everybody back because when they were healthy, they were still really good. But we'll see. We'll see what Danny Ainge decides to do. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to make some moves. So that's going to be a tough decision for him to make. And then here's one of those harsh reactions from Ray, but even he's not saying get rid of Tatum or Brown. Fire everyone. Keep Tatum, Brown, Robert Williams. Stevens, maybe. I don't care about his X's and O's. Can you freaking coach is the real question. Ainge hasn't done ish after Tatum, Brown, and Kemba. Look, when people say Danny Ainge hasn't done a lot after Tatum, Brown, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I kind of laugh because those were spectacular moves. I don't care how high the pick you have in the draft was. People still draft busts up there. If you went by where the board had players ranked, where the big board for draft prospects in those drafts, the Celtics wouldn't have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum right now. They'd have Markelle Fultz and Dragan Bender because they wouldn't have traded that number one overall pick. They would have taken Markelle Fultz. They would have drafted Dragan Bender. That's what the big board said. So as far as I'm concerned, Danny Ainge still gets so much credit for drafting Tatum and Brown, so much credit. And it's a lot harder when you get down to, 14, 15 to hit. A lot of people want to talk about Hero and Halliburton and all this stuff. Those are one guy out of, the 5, 6, 7, 8 that are drafted in that range. And the 6, 7, or 8 other guys usually aren't that good. So you got to give Danny Ainge a little bit of a pass there. Steven saying Washington is never making that trade. Maybe not. Maybe Washington never does. But we'll see. Again, if Beal forces his way out and says, I'm only going to Boston, I'm curious to see what happened. And and Justin, of course, Justin's the one that says trade Jason Tatum. And if Brown goes, I don't care. Justin, that's just stupid, Justin. I'm sorry. Justin, you're an idiot for saying that. Get out of here. And I know Justin, guys. I don't know if he's joking around or not, but he's Justin, that's ridiculous. I'm ready for a brand new lineup. I think that's a little harsh. Depending on what you mean there. I don't know if you mean everybody or just a couple guys, but that's a little crazy if you mean everybody. I don't care what anyone says. All this has to do with his upper management. In any job in real life, you hire a garbage. You will get garbage output. And I mean, I don't think the Celtics front office is garbage. I think it's a little harsh. Again, Danny Ainge, this season, he doesn't get a passing grade. He didn't do that well. But I think that overall he still has made some really good moves for this team. And bringing in, you got to give him credit because for as much as people want to bash Kemba Walker, landing him was still very, very important to the health of this team. He was an all-star the year following his signing. Again, his averages this season aren't as bad as people make them out to be. A lot of people want to rag on like his signing of Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, whatever else. Like those were good signings, and his ability to recruit is extremely underrated. I want the Celtics to get a new big, maybe some bench help. We'll see about that. Gregory saying get rid of Kemba and Smart if you can. Want them both gone. And yeah, I mean, again, what do you guys want for them? Like, I'm not. You guys keep saying like, and even Justin's here saying get rid of Marcus Smart. You guys keep saying. I keep saying in the chat. I keep seeing this stuff in the chat. Trade Tatum, trade not trade Tatum too much, but trade Marcus Smart, trade trade whatever or Kemba Walker, all this stuff. Trade maybe trade Robert Williams, all this stuff. Give me some ideas. Throw some names out there. You guys are saying get rid of them. For who? Who do you want them to trade it for? Don't make me pick the names. Like I'll give you them if you want me some options, but I want to hear you guys. Who do you guys want for those guys? Because the options out there aren't like it's not all great shakes. And again, another one. Trade for Sexton. Oh my goodness. Colin Sexton's an interesting one because obviously he's the guy. That the Celtics could have had if they didn't trade Kyrie. If they didn't trade for Kyrie, they would have had that pick. Would they have to call him Sexton? Who knows? But now there are rumors that the Cavaliers are trying to trade him, and they might look to trade him this offseason, and everything like that. I don't know what it would cost. I think it would cost still a little too much, even if he's available. So I don't know. I tweeted that out wrong a little bit. Hold on, let me fix this. But I don't know if Sexton's really an option for them. And ultimately, I think that, I talked about, I mean, I guess maybe they could package some young assets together and try to get something going for Sexton. I just think that I don't know if the Cavaliers are actually going to try to trade him. I think that's kind of ridiculous if the Cavaliers try to give up on him already. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they actually decide to do with him. He's a kind of a weird player, volume shooter. I don't know if that's what you necessarily want next to Tatum and Brown, is a guy that's kind of known as a chucker a little bit, but he didn't have the best talent to play with in Cleveland. So does that have something to do with it? I don't know. I mean, I would have to see what a potential trade package would look like, but something tells me the Cavaliers, if they're trading Sexton, they probably want a somewhat high draft pick. Like you're talking maybe, a mid-tier lottery pick. So, because I would assume they just want to reset as we get my batteries off. So I knew that was coming eventually here. So let me just get set up with my other camera here, and we'll keep the stream going. But for a little while longer, at least. Here we go. All right. But as far as Sexton goes, I think the Cavaliers are going to want to go in a different direction there. I don't think that they're going to ultimately want to trade. I don't think they're going to want to. And I have to cut this guys to a different thing. Just give me a second here to adjust this. I know that's not the game we're talking about today, but I got to switch it out to whatever the last game was so that I can fix this. But as far as Sexton goes, I think that the Cavaliers are probably going to want to reset. I don't think they're going to be interested in whether it's Fournier or not Fournier, whether it's Langford or whoever the Celtics kind of throw out there to the Cavaliers in hopes that they can lure or get them to move off of Sexton for him. I don't think that it's going to happen. So I think it's a little bit tough. It's a tough sell if you're the Celtics and you're going to the Cavaliers. And here we go as we get this fixed. It's a tough sell if you're the Celtics and you're going to the Cavaliers trying to say, hey, yeah, take Neesmith and Langford and Peyton Pritchard for Colin Sexton. Like, those guys are fine, but I think the Cavaliers want another shot at getting a star, another lottery ticket, so to speak, and that's why they would want to pick more than anything. Trade Jason Tatum, no. Kemba for John Wall. Some people are going to hate this. I don't actually hate Kemba for John Wall. I don't actually hate it. I don't think it's perfect. I think but Kemba's not perfect either. If you're trading Kemba, you're not getting a perfect play in return. I think some people would argue, are you just trading Kemba for another, for another problem, basically? Like, you're just trading Kemba for someone who's just going to have another, injuries, problems of his own, and inconsistency what's the word I'm looking for? Inconsistency and efficiency problems of his own. And, he only played 40 games this season. Kemba actually played more than John Wall this season, if you can believe it. But, John Wall it was his first season back from injury. So, you give him from a couple major injuries, in fact. So maybe you give him the benefit of the doubt, like, he was working his way back into shape, all that stuff. I think he's almost the same age as Kemba. He's only like half a year, if that, younger. But he's a lot bigger, so you hope that he's, a lot more athletic. So maybe in the long run, he's more sturdy. I know he's had his own injury issue. He's had his own, issues with injuries over these past few years. But maybe, he can still build his way back up into being the player he was again. This was his first year back from a couple major injuries. Maybe next year he's fully healthy again. He's working his way back into shape. I don't know. I'm not going to totally dismiss the idea like I think some people would. And I assume a lot of you guys don't like it. When Kemba plays is going to be what I said about when Kemba plays. He was actually good. Think of this. They literally didn't play him in any of the back-to-back games all year in order for him to be ready for the playoffs. Remind me how he performed in the playoffs. So I did talk about this in the pregame show, earlier tonight, that was the most disappointing part of the entire season. They were trying with the intent, like, oh yeah, we're going to rest him so he's healthy for the playoffs, and he wasn't. So that was disappointing. But I wasn't really talking about that. I was just focusing on the fact that, during the regular season, he's still an effective player. And the fact that he's not effective in the postseason is a huge, huge problem. I just don't know how you get around that. Look, I mean, we can sit here and talk about, hey, the postseason is all that matters. All that matters is how you do in the playoffs. That's everything, especially in Boston, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, that's not true. You still have to get there. The regular season games still matter for seeding, for standing, stuff like that. And we saw that this season. They still need those games for standing. So the fact is, I'm not trading Kemba Walker just for that reason alone, for nothing, because he can still help you in the regular season more than other guys can. And guess what? If you trade him for some, backup shooting guard or something somewhere, and that's all you're getting back, that guy's not going to be great in the playoffs either. So, it's not, there's just not a lot of options with Kemba, not a lot of good ones. You have to trade smart. Kemba, Boston sports stations are saying this as well. Trade those dudes. Who cares if Marcus Smart has heart? Is he racking up points on the board consistently? Keep Langford all day. He's starting to get going. He was finally put in the lineup, and he started racking up 3-pointers. Don't sleep on that dude. It's not his fault. He was plagued with injuries. You say that, Ray, but at the same time, people are saying are going back on Kemba and saying, oh, it's Kemba's fault that he was racked with injuries, which I think is fair. So I think it's also fair to say it about Romeo Langford, that, if you want to say, look, this guy's injury prone and we can't, we can't work with that, then that's fine. And I'm still not sold on Romeo. Again, this was one game tonight where he really played well. Over the course of the whole season, he was good defensively, but that was it. His offensive game was sporadic at best. At best, I'm going to call it sporadic. So I think that's a little crazy to say that you're putting so much faith into Romeo. I would still take Marcus Smart over Romeo Langford 10 times out of 10. Saying we might have lost this series, but we kept it. It was kept close because of him. It wasn't kept that close. They lost 4-1, and most of these games weren't that close. So I don't know what you're talking about. The thing is, nobody wants to play in Boston. Nobody you trade for wants to play in Boston. They just will. I don't buy that. I think there's still players out there that want to play in Boston. So I'm going to say I'm not going that far. We're going to end it soon, guys. We're going to end the stream soon. I know there's a lot more comments I haven't gotten to. Ray, I know I see you talk about Carson Edwards. It's super athletic. If he had to put Kyrie, I promise you would carry or would have shut down. I don't care what anyone has to say. I'm not buying that. If you put him on Kyrie, oh my God. No. Carson Edwards is not a good defender. Carson Edwards has big thighs, but that doesn't mean he's a good defender at all. He's not. And ever since IT was done, you're saying that the Celtics shot themselves in the foot. I don't think that's the case. I think Boston's future looks bleak at best. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. They still have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And Jason Tatum proved this season that he's going to be a top 10 player. And there are coaches across the league that, there are multiple people across the league who are saying that Jason Tatum's going to be a future MVP in this league. So it's absolutely insane to say their future is bleak. That's ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous. If anything, they still have a lot of young players. So as those guys grow, they'll just only get better. So that is absolutely ridiculous. It's idiotic to say that. And you're saying give dudes playing time and don't get in rhythm. I'm not reading any more about this Edwards stuff. Ray, you have a lot of comments. I gotta give other people some chances to jump in here. You're talking a lot about Carson Edwards and Romeo Langford. I get it. Those guys are still young, but Romeo Langford I can deal with. Romeo Langford had a good night, and he's shown some promise this season. Carson Edwards has shown nothing pretty much ever. So I'm done with Carson Edwards. I'm not letting you talk about Carson Edwards anymore tonight, Ray. And you're saying I hope the Bucks destroy Brooklyn is all I'm gonna say. I just think it'll be a fun series. I'm not gonna have a rooting interest. I don't like to watch it that way neutrally because it gets me I get too invested, and I would just rather just watch the basketball than get really upset at the basketball. So I'm just going to see, but it should be a great series. And Booker is apparently killing the Lakers right now. You love to see it. You love to see the Lakers get killed. You're saying riding the Suns this postseason. I want CP3 to get a ring. Okay, and this is going to be Jag saying give Danny Ainge a pass. Let me ask you, how often do you plan on having a top 3 pick moving forward? Because traditional championship contenders don't have that. I don't think you need many more. You don't need any more top 3 picks, really. And again, you're not really proving anything that I said was wrong. Danny Ainge hit on those picks, and it's impressive. I think people want to say, oh, it's not impressive to hit on a high draft pick. It is. I just explained to you why it is. Look at the players that were drafted around those players. Josh Jackson was drafted right after Jason Tatum. Would you rather have Josh Jackson right now? Obviously, absolutely not. A lot of people thought Josh Jackson was better than Jason Tatum. Look at the other players. Lonzo Ball, Markelle Fultz. The other players drafted around Jaylen Brown. Buddy Hield was drafted. Buddy Hield's pretty good. But, there's tons of players that are drafted high in the draft that are terrible every year. Jabari Parker was drafted second. Andrew Wiggins was drafted first. The list goes on. There, Anthony Bennett was drafted first. There are so many players that are drafted in the top 3 that are terrible. So it's not an automatic, oh, well, yeah, he hit in the top 3. Obviously, anybody can do that. No, not everybody can do that. Trade coming for Bill Russell. That's what and you're just saying the same thing, Jags. I'm not going to read it again. And I think, guess what? Danny Ainge just hit on Peyton Pritchard in the draft. And some other guys he's had should still be coming along. Robert Williams, he hit on Robert Williams late in the draft too. So if you have Tatum, Brown, Robert Williams going forward, and Robert Williams stays healthy, then all of a sudden you have 3 really, really good players. I don't know that you can really get on him for that. And now you're saying he getting on him for losing like Kyrie, Hayward, and Horford. I mean, I don't know. You wouldn't have had those guys if Danny Ainge didn't bring him in the first place. So, he recruited him to Boston, and they left because Hayward got more money, Horford got more money. Like, what do you want them to do? Because Jags, I guarantee you were also saying those off seasons that you didn't want to pay Horford that much. You didn't want to pay Hayward that much. But now you're lamenting Danny Ainge for not keeping those guys. There is no way you wanted them to keep those guys. I guarantee you were the same guy that was saying during those off seasons that that's too much money for those guys. You can't, and you were probably saying they sucked when they were here. Right, Jags, you were probably one of those guys that said, trade Gordon Hayward. Horford's terrible. He's not an all-star, blah, blah, blah. And now you're the guy that's saying, oh, you let those guys walk, blah, blah, blah. That's ridiculous. So, Jags, I guarantee you were that guy. And now you're saying, oh, they lost those guys. Yeah, like because you didn't even value them to begin with. So I think you're just being you're one of those negative people for negative sake. So I'm not going to entertain it. Trade smart for Derrick Rose. I think Derrick Rose might even be a free agent, so you wouldn't even have to do that. Don't mind me. He's been my favorite player forever, regardless of the injuries. I appreciate that. Yeah, I can respect that. Derrick Rose has been a great story. Razin saying, should be a fun offseason. Are you and the rest of the guys planning on doing a lot of shows? I think so. We talked about it a little bit and what we might do this offseason, and we've already thrown around a few ideas. So I think we'll definitely jump on here for more streams during the offseason. Wouldn't have to hide Wall on D. Doesn't need to score to be effective. He's a better passer. That's absolutely true. And isn't a ball stopper. Is willing to penetrate, always go to the hoop. Yeah, and those are some things I like about John Wall too. So you could argue that even if Kemba and John Wall are, 6 in one, half dozen in the other, both are injury-plagued point guards that are well past their prime, not an all-star anymore because of the injuries they've faced. And you're not going to get 82 games out of them. Fine. But John Wall, in the games that he does play, might be a better fit with Brown and Tatum because he's a better passer, willing defender, blah, 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 all that stuff. And Ray saying, I would not trade Peyton Pritchard. Give him 5 years, top point guard, top 3 point guard shooter in the league. That's a little much. Peyton Pritchard, great shooter. He's been a great shooter this season. We'll see if that persists. Again, it's just 1 year. We've seen guys have one great year and then fall off a little bit. So I'm not willing to buy into he's going to keep on his rise. I think the Fred VanVleet comparisons have actually bared out and been really, really good. And it's actually been a great comp. It's one of the rare cases where the fan, like the comp that the fans throw out there kind of fanatically, so to speak, and they throw it out there and it seems a little bit much. In this case, it seems like it's actually been pretty true, and the Fred VanVleet comp has been perfect. So, and you really compare their stats, and it lines up. So, but I wouldn't say don't trade him. It depends on what you can get for him. That's always the case. And Pritchard's not untouchable to me. Depends on what they can land for him. Trade Kemba for CP3. Don't know if the Suns are doing that right now. You make me laugh, but I like the non-agreement. As makes so good. Don't know which argument you're talking about there, but Ray, you said a lot. Maybe it was the Carson Edwards one. I'm literally cracking up. You disagree with everybody's comments. Love it. And Fab saying, I just hope we don't turn like the Trailblazers, 2 stars with no help. Someone step up Danny. Somehow step up Danny. I think the thing we need to remember about the Trailblazers is they're 2 stars. First of all, CJ McCollum, not as good as Jaylen Brown. And having 2 star guards is a lot different than having 2 star wings because CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard are pure offense, no defense, and that's part of what's been the Trailblazers' problem is they can't play a lick of defense. So I'm hesitant on saying, oh, no, they're going to become the Trailblazers because the Trailblazers, just the way a function of having 2 star guards that can't defend is that you're never going to be good on defense because the center of your team is those players that aren't good on defense. So that's the problem with the Trailblazers that I don't think the Celtics are realistically going to face. Draft height, Herbert Jones. We'll do draft talk in the offseason, I promise. But I'm not talking too much about Herbert Jones right now. And CP3 is a free agent this summer. So I don't know. Sign and trade with the Suns for CP3. I don't think it's going to happen. But who knows? Who knows where CP3 will end up. All right, guys. That's pretty much going to do it. I want to say thank you again for everything as far as helping us grow our YouTube channel, helping us grow the Twitter this season. It's been as terrible as it's been for the Celtics. It's been a great year for us. So as maybe selfish as that sounds, I don't know if that sounded selfish, but we do appreciate it, guys. So and I did a big thank you on the last stream, so I don't want to reiterate everything here again. So if you want to hear my big thank you, go to the end of the last stream. I did it there for like 6 minutes. I'll just leave it simple here at that and just say thank you guys for tuning in as always. We'll see you in the off season. Hopefully the Celtics will be better and we'll have a better time on these post-game shows next year when Ev will be back. And again, stay tuned into the YouTube channel. I'm almost positive Ev will have something in the coming days to talk about the season. So I guess all I can say now is thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you when we see you. Maybe that's next season.